Hello, you're watching Hornbill TV. Nagaland became a state in 1963. When Nagaland became a state in 1963, it was given special status and exempted from taxes, but disturbances continued. Although 5 Naga groups have signed ceasefire agreements with the Indian government over time, more than 20 plus groups still exist in Nagaland today. A protest took place yesterday, August 6th, in Kohima, the capital of Nagaland, against ongoing illegal taxation, harassment, intimidation and death threats to common people. Protesters from different communities, dressed in their traditional attire, joined the rally organized by the Angami Youth Organization to show their support. The rally was held after the Nscn Kango group issued a death penalty to an Angami contractor. Speakers at the rally were unanimous in condemning any illegal activities and asked people to stand in unison against such acts. In this regard, to talk a little more on how the citizens responded to yesterday's rally, I'm being joined by our Associate Editor, Sir Almuli, live from the newsroom. So, hi Sir, good morning.
Hi Naomi.
Sir, looking at the crowd turnout and the clear message from leaders from various organizations in yesterday's rally, so do you see any hope of serious positive development after this rally? Because in the past, Eout have also fought against the same issue, but it didn't seem to change anything.
Oh, I wasn't expecting that angle to your question, Naomi, and that's a very good one. I always say that if eventually one day or the other, now or later, that the Naga nationalist movement would be brought under control in any way, it would not be by the hands of the state government. It will not be by the hands of the government of India. It will not be brought under control by the Indian military. It will be brought under control by your generation, the 25 generation, the 18 to 25. And you know the reason why, Nami? This is the reason. Your generation has never suffered the excesses of the Indian military. Second, you suffer only the injustices that have been perpetrated by the nationalist group in the name of nationalism. Now, this is the reason why the Naga nationalist movement was very strong during the past 60 years. The reason was that our fathers and our parents and our grandfathers, our grandparents, they firsthand suffered excesses, killing, rape, murder of only the Indian military. And that is why the narrative and the motivation to fight for the land was very strong among our people. But now our grandparents are dying out. That generation is slowly fading. And now your generation, my generation, people who have never really firsthand personally suffered the acceleration will be the downfall of the Naga nationalist group, now or later, eventually. So, to your question, will this continue? I think most political observers believe that what the Angami Youth Organization has done in Kohima yesterday will continue to be a regular event from now on. It won't be always, hopefully, because that will mean a breakdown of law and order. But eventually, there will be slowly people who will be coming up. The AYO issue started. They put their foot down, no, this is enough. And then suddenly, in Ziniopoto, the Sumi youths, I think it was the Sumi youths, right? Or is it the students? Or the Sumi Hoho, I'm not sure. But right after that, as the Sumi community said, this Nscn faction, this particular Nscn faction has been banned from Ziniopoto. Now that is representative of the growing anger and the suffering that the people are undergoing because of extortions, the threats and killings. And I'm telling you, your generation is very lucky, Nami. Your generation did not see that many of killings. And when I say killings, I don't mean killings between the Naga factional groups. I'm talking about Naga groups killing civilians, shopkeepers, business people, people who refuse to pay house tax. My generation saw a lot of it. So for me, I understand the pain and the suffering. Imagine living your entire life under fear, Naomi. So I'm telling you, maybe this might be a one-off, we don't know, but eventually a new generation will come up who don't know either the Indian military or who don't know the Naga nationalist movement or how the Naga nationalist movement started. This young generation, the one, your niece, your nephews, this small generation will come up and they are going to say, hey, what is going on? And they're going to stand up. So that is the danger that poses, if I may put it that way, to the much beloved Naga nationalist movement before it became what it has become today, Naomi.
All right. So, what are the primary reasons that threats and death threats, killing of civilians, like you mentioned, by non-state actors, extortion and fear psychosis in Nagaland has, persisted for decades, regardless of the people's suffering, sir?
Like I said, it will be very interesting if someday media students or even journalists can go through the archives of the Nagaland Post, for example. Nagaland Post has been there for a very long time. So in their archives, there are thousands of reports that will give you an idea of what life was back then, especially in the 80s and the 90s, Nami. A lot of killings, many of them members of various underground groups shot by their nationalist rivals. A lot of business people, they are not related with the movement. They were business people or villagers, they were GBs. A lot of non-combatants were killed during those times. And I know a lot of people, my friends, brothers and sisters who were shot dead. Even women, and especially drug addicts and alcoholics, that's what we used to call them those days. So it's not about whether they did something or not, but these are about taking lives of people, taking away their livelihood, their breath. So I come from that place, I come from that generation where we saw a lot of bloodshed, and for us the trauma is ingrained in us. So eventually the way forward is that, of course, today the killings are not as much as it used to be. And times are changing also. New generations are coming up with new ideologies, with a sense of individualism and dignity and self-respect. New generations are coming up. So while extortion and killings were common even those days, and unfortunately extortion is very common these days, and that is the reason why the AYO rally was held in Kohima. I believe, like I said earlier, these things, I think, people protesting, people standing up for their rights will continue to happen even in the future, now or later, eventually, one way or the other.
All right. Sir, looking at the present wave that's going on, sir, do you believe that the people are gradually finding their voice against the decades of threats, violence and extortion by the nationalist groups?
Yeah, definitely. I don't want to call it the AYO issue because it is not an Angami youth organization issue. Personally, that's what I feel, because what they're going through is what every community in Nagaland is going through. The Eout people, Lotasumi, everyone, they are suffering under this regime called taxation. And we don't know where those money goes, into what it goes, into what it is put. So while the people seem to be, as you said, finding their voice now, this has not always been in the way it was held in Kohima. I think there have been a lot of protests in the past also, and I remember a time during a very sensitive time, I think it was way back 97 or 98 in Woka, the people were fed up, and I remember that two members of an underground faction, I think it was the Nscn, I don't know, NNC, the public pulled them out and killed them right near the playground. And I also remember another instance when I was in college. It was in Woka, just nearby my sister's place. A mob of youths, they dragged three members, I think three members of a Naga underground faction, and lynched them. And I don't know if I should say this. Someone told me that the youths actually lifted up boulders, stones, and stoned them. Just right there at the spot. And I remember another case, I think it was during the early 2000s in Jalugi. A group of people in Jalugi, they got one nationalist activist and they lynched him right there on the road. And even in Kefri also. And during the time, I think one of the groups, they also issued a statement why their member was killed by the public. So instances like this have been happening now and then, sporadically, but what we saw yesterday in Kohima was a more visual representation of the fear and our sense of injustice and our sense of being violated by the fears and threats that we have been living for a long time. So I think this will continue, and in 2013 I think another representation, a visual representation of our disgust and our condemnation was seen in October 2013 when the Eout held a rally at the City Toa. Thousands of people came up, they turned up. One government, no tax at all if there is no one government. If there are 20, 30 nationalist groups asking for tax, what will we eat? What are we going to give our children? How are we going to take care of our future if this many nationalist groups are going to take taxes from us, keep threatening us, and insult our way of life, damage the quality of our lives too? So that was a visual representation and the message given out during the Eout rally. So I would say that this is not the first time, but I think from now on we might be seeing a lot of protests from the people's side in this regard.
All right, sir. Just as you have mentioned just now, going back to the year 2013, the People's Movement Eout has, fought against the similar issue today, in the past, the year 2013, whereby a banner was even put up in Dimapur, where a lot of leaders, church leaders, also came up and penned down their signatures on the banner, and including Indian Olympian and women boxing champion Mary Kom. So, sir, do you think that my question here is how did such strong movement fade away over time, or did the movement come under any sort of intimidation or threat as well, sir? How did it vanish?
It's very interesting that you are asking me that question, because just yesterday while I was going home, I sat with one of my neighbors and we were talking about an organization we now know as the Eout, the no longer anti-corruption group. We don't know where it is now. There was a time the Eout was considered the savior, the voice, the opposition voice of the people of Nagaland, especially in regard to all the problems and injustices that most of us have been facing. And now it's no longer there. I think the primary reason is that when you dilute your social movements, which is powered by a sense of value and a sense of morality, and it is always led by a moral compass. And when you turn it into a political ambition, then that is, I think, one of the commonest deaths of any social movements across civilizations over the history. So I think one of the reasons that an organization like the Eout faded away was that I think they failed to prioritize the grievances of the people in exchange for a sense of, in exchange for political influence. That is one thing. But community movements do not always work on its own. Community movements always must have the support of legislative platforms. And in this case, I think another reason is that there has rarely been any strong support to the people from the government of Nagaland over the past many years. It's not just Nefirio, it's not just SC Jamir, but the government, we have never had a strong government where the leaders would say, these are my people and this has to stop now. It could be in any issue. It could be extortion, it could be killings, violence, bloodshed, it could be education, it could be corruption, it could be developmental morass. But there has never been, in my memory, maybe before me, in my generation, I think there might have been strong governments, but in my generation, starting from my generation, we have never seen a strong government. Look at the press release the government issued after the AYO issue came up. It looked like a birthday invitation, the press release from the government. It was like, please don't do this, please don't do it. You are our protector. You are supposed to be taking care of us, not...
Yes, sir.
So it was like a birthday message, Instead of, no, this has to stop. We need to protect the rights of the people. These are the machineries that have to take charge of what is going on in Nagaland. Law and order has to be issued. No, it was nothing like that. Please stop doing that. It's embarrassing. And these are the kind of leaderships, legislative platforms representing us. And that is another reason why movements die out. And the third is, because of all these reasons combined, social movements abandoning us, government not really taking care of us, we also get tired. And suddenly, so we just keep suffering like that. But hopefully, God willing, this will not continue, but we will also assert the rights of the people. But also, I think this is a very good opportunity for the nationalist groups, our nationalist groups, to just sit together, do a soul search. Where are we going wrong? What are we doing wrong? How do we win the hearts of the people? How do we win their support? I think it's a very good opportunity for them to actually start thinking and feeling about the suffering of the people.
Yes,
and they will win the people's support if they do.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir, lastly, do you think the trend of protest is laying the foundation for the next generation of Nagas who will not feel deeply for the nationalist movement, sir?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, your generation and then the ones under you, the nieces and nephews coming up, the small sons and daughters coming up, they have never heard of Indian military excesses. They might read it later when they grow up, but they don't feel it. They don't have that story of trauma and pain enough for them to feel the Naga national history. And they also don't understand the suffering their grandparents went through. So when they grow up, they will not be able to have any kind of sentimental attachment with either the story of trauma caused by the Indian military or the story of pain caused by the nationalist groups. So eventually, one way or the other, it will not, if at all, the Naga movement, nationalist movement somehow fades away in the future, in case something like that happens, then it will not be by military might. It will be by the younger generation who never understood or knew or heard or felt the Naga history.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for joining me, sir, and sharing us your insights. Well, that
Thank
was
you,
our,
Nami, for having me.
Well, that was our Associate Editor Al-Nguli joining me live from the newsroom. And just as we've heard, well, the fight against illegal taxation and intimidation in Nagaland is far from over. But the unity and the determination shown yesterday at the rally that was held in Kohima, it gives a ray of hope, or a glimmer of hope for positive change in the coming days. Well, we'll be keeping track on this story and giving you all the updates. So stay tuned with Hornbill TV, and thank you for watching.